What do you think are going to be the key institutional or the key economic milestones looking forward that will drive Bitcoin adoption?
So I think we're seeing early signs of it. Basically, I think that the banking industry is still in the early innings of interfacing with the Bitcoin network. And so we've seen, for example, after the institutional grade custodians came in, you started to see some of the investment banks come in. You started to see custodian banks like Bank of New York Mellon get into the space, and now there's firms like NYDIG that are making it easier for commercial banks to offer Bitcoin-related services. Basically, a lot of banks have been seeing that people would pull their capital out and send it over to places like Coinbase or other exchanges, and banks are saying, how can we retain more of that in our ecosystem? And so I think basically now you're seeing more and more integration. And so I think there are milestones to watch about more banks getting involved, maybe more insurance companies getting involved. I think another big thing that's really early is the RIA space. So, there's tens of trillions of dollars of capital managed by RIAs. And they have all sorts of reporting requirements, rebalancing, needs. They need certain interfaces and certain things. And there are companies now like Swan Bitcoin and others that are starting to roll out more and more services aimed at them. And I think that's going to be a pretty big, I think, adoption story over the next 3 to 5 years as well. And that's still, that's behind the curve of some of these other pools of capital. So I think as we go along, there's just more and more kind of tentacles going out through the various types of capital that have their needs met in terms of bringing their capital into the space.
One interesting economic milestone we hit was just a few months ago when every government in the world acknowledged large amounts of consumer inflation, CPI and producer inflation, and it was acknowledged as an issue. I feel like a year ago it wasn't acknowledged, but today it is acknowledged. And probably the big economic driver that will continue will just be inflationary public policy. And if we acknowledge that we've got 5 or 6 or 7% inflation, there's no central bank in Western Europe or the United States that has articulated a plan to raise interest rates to 5 or 6 or 7%. We're sitting in a zone for the next 3 to 4 years where it looks like we've got negative real yields, we've got continuing inflationary policy, and the discussion has moved into mainstream, the discussion of stagflation. And I guess what we saw, which was interesting in the past month, was we saw a crisis of confidence in the equity market, right? That brought, it used to be Bitcoin was a very volatile asset that may or may not be an inflation hedge. And now equity looks like a very volatile asset that may or may not be an inflation hedge. And so you've got the mainstream apparatus, mainstream media, mainstream investors acknowledging crypto and Bitcoin as an asset class versus property versus bonds versus equity, no safe haven, and a mutually agreed problem. And I guess one last point I make is I hear rumors from all my contacts that there's an avalanche of macro hedge funds coming into the space, setting up accounts, like an increase by almost an order of magnitude. It used to be there was 1 or 2 macro traders, and now I think a lot of hedge funds are setting up accounts, and their view is we have to trade this stuff.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information, and it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
Whether or not they'll stand up and say, I want to hold $1 billion or $10 billion of it for a decade, well, we're still waiting for that. But it seems like at the end of the year, at the end of 2021, I heard all sorts of stories that, conventional macro funds yielded 3 or 4% ROI in the year, and crypto hedge funds had 500% returns in the year, and 200% returns, and some at 1,000% returns, and 100% returns. Someone made 10 or 100x as much trading that volatility. Whether or not I'm ready to marry this asset, I'm sure that I want to trade and I want to be engaged. I can't afford to ignore this, and that's kind of the message that we're hearing even from the big bulge bracket banks on Wall Street, that I'll paraphrase them. This is not going away. We need to figure it out. I think if you look at the market versus 2 years ago, 2 years ago, there was crypto and the regulators were too busy to deal with it. No one wanted to deal with it. And it was like a fringe thing. And I think that with the new Biden administration and with the new set of financial regulators, we had a lot of very crypto sophisticated regulators come into the administration. And now I think there's a consensus amongst politicians, both in the administration and the Senate and Congress, that the crypto economy is here to stay. They need to master and figure out what this means to the future of the finance industry, maybe the future of the world. What does this mean to America? What does it mean to Western Europe? What does it mean to any country? I feel like it wasn't on the agenda 18 months ago. Like you could have just dismissed it and said, well, it doesn't matter, right? No public company owns this stuff. It wasn't important, and it was an offshore retail phenomenon. And so I think that the fact is the regulators now have it on their radar. That's the first important point. I think the second point is now instead of just calling it all crypto or cryptocurrency, which is a misnomer, I think that people are realizing that what we have here is digital property, digital currency, digital exchanges, digital securities, digital art, digital commodities, and digital derivatives. And they're breaking this into a taxonomy. Like an NFT is digital art. Well, a small token issued by a group of people is a digital security. A stable coin is a digital currency. Bitcoin isn't a digital currency. A crypto exchange or a DeFi exchange is an exchange. And so now you've got the question of what's the definition of every single type of digital asset? There's not one, there's many. How are we going to treat them? The answer is differently. Right? And it crosses every regulator, the CFTC, Treasury, banking regulators, securities regulators. I don't even know who regulates arts and intellectual property rights, in cyberspace.
Do you want to know one thing about crypto? I made over 3,000% in profit in a few weeks. Fact is, the traditional financial system, the traditional money system makes you poor, not rich. If you want to earn $500,000, $1 million, you have to wait until you're 50, 60, 70 in the traditional financial system, and you probably will still be broke. And you will be old. This is not a sexy combination, as you can imagine. But the question is, how can you start in crypto and make these profits? Where to invest? Where to start? My name is Gunnar and I'm from Germany, as you can hear, and things are a little bit different in Germany. More about that later on. Fact is, there are lots of different cryptocurrencies. It's a gigantic universe where beginners and professionals get easily lost. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are 7 key steps you need to follow to become successful in this market. You have to know them, and if you fail one of them, it's literally impossible to succeed in this market. Just an example, one of the key points is your exchange, and one of the biggest are, for example, Binance and Coinbase. These are trusted and well-established exchanges, but, and this is a big but, you won't find the super profitable coins on those exchanges. The unknown super profitable coins that get gigantic profits are not traded on those kind of exchanges. They are traded on much smaller insider platforms that are barely known. And I can tell you what those super secret exchanges are and why they are so profitable. And another super important thing are the right information sources. The point is, the internet is gigantic. There are hundreds and hundreds of YouTube channels, blogs, pages, and much more. And there are also market makers and influencers. For example, Elon Musk, he is not a crypto guy, but the moment he recommended Dogecoin, it went through the roof, to the moon, so to say. But why did he recommend it? Where did he hear it from? He didn't hear it from newspapers. And believe me, he is listening to someone. But you have to know who, and you have to react before he is reacting. This is really, really important. And these are only 2 of the 7 steps you have to follow in order to be successful in crypto. And if you want to know all of these steps in much more detail, and if you want to have a comprehensive checklist, here's what you should do. There is a link below this video. Click on this link and you will get the opportunity to subscribe to my channel. Click on the link and you will see a video where I explain the next steps. So see you soon. Click on the link now. I'll see you there.